if you would have asked me what's happening with Best Buy, I would have said I would expect that they're seeing competitive pressure. I would expect that they're seeing declining turnover. I think of the early days of the iPhone when everybody was on a standard 12-month upcycle period. And I just honestly think that those numbers have really shifted. So I'm just thinking, like, what are people buying? And my initial reaction, which was wrong, PS, was this must be something where they just did better than people expected. Like, everybody expected them to be, in bankruptcy or in the trash, and they somehow outperformed that.
Welcome to this special Thanksgiving week edition of Market Outsiders. We're here today talking about everybody's favorite Black Friday destination, Best Buy. And I've got to admit, Jenny Rae, I was really surprised when you told me that Best Buy's earnings trajectory was up and to the right. I've not been to Best Buy in years. I didn't know anybody else still went to Best Buy. I will not be there on Friday. I don't think you will be either. But apparently people are still shopping at Best Buy. So we're going to talk about it today, talk about how they're outperforming what a lot of people are calling a K-shaped economy and why people continue to spend money at Best Buy. How are you today before we dive into that story?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. I feel this rush every year of excitement. And this year in particular, I feel excitement and confusion mixed together when it comes to Black Friday. It used to be like a strategic chaos for one day. And now I feel like the holiday season is 2 months long, and I'm actually not sure what the best deals are. Is it the early November deals? Is it the Black Friday deals? Is it the Cyber Monday deals? Is it, I know that it's not the day before Christmas, but like, honestly, I don't know within about a 5-week period what the best deals are. But I have memories of actually standing in line before opening at Best Buy. I think they opened at 5 a.m. So my family left the house at 4. We like stood in line beforehand and ran to get, honestly, don't even remember what it was, for somebody at some point in my upbringing. And we would like crush the holiday sales. And by 10 a.m., we would go have breakfast. And then that was kind of the thing. So this is kind of a fun piece of nostalgia for me. I don't know who's taking the other side of these bets, because I would have bet on the same side of the coin for you. And I actually thought that was really why this was interesting to look at today, because if you would have asked me what's happening with Best Buy, I would have said I would expect that they're seeing competitive pressure. I would expect that they're seeing declining turnover. I think of the early days of the iPhone when everybody was on a standard 12-month upcycle period. And I just honestly think that those numbers have really shifted. So I'm just thinking, like, what are people buying? And my initial reaction, which was wrong, PS, was this must be something where they just did better than people expected. Like, everybody expected them to be, in bankruptcy or in the trash, and they somehow outperformed that. And even that wasn't true. So I'm really excited to talk through some of the mechanics, some of the numbers, and also some of the why here, because I think there's actually a lot of fun stuff going on here. So here's the headline. Best Buy hikes sales forecast as shoppers upgrade tech and splurge on devices. So immediately I clicked on it because I thought this is going to be a perfect opportunity to just rail, right? This is a great example of a clickbaity thing where Best Buy hikes their sales forecast from what was dismal to what is slightly less dismal. And it's actually not that at all. So they hiked their full year sales and earnings outlook. So not just going into this period, but actually for the 12 months, they see a lot of durability and this is part of what they're saying. They're also seeing pretty kind of big excitement around some of the big releases. And so that was kind of interesting and exciting. They also have it in multiple areas. And then later in the article, it says in-store and online. And I was just, I'm thinking, like, at this point, I'm just flabbergasted. This is my version of like true crime. I'm like, it cannot be true, right? How could they get away with this kind of stuff? And then the last thing that was kind of the context for this, which was the one thing in here that I believed wholeheartedly, was that their annual sales have declined for the past 3 years. And like, I actually don't feel like Best Buy has done much wrong. In fact, they have done one of the only right things with their services department that kept them alive in a sea of closures with other firms going under. And so I suspected that the only way that they would have been able to do this was in services, and I was wrong yet again. So do you have any kind of initial reactions or thesis for why this is happening for Best Buy before we dive into some of the numbers?
Yeah, I had 2 initial thoughts. Number 1, boomers must be doing all right because I think those are the only people who shop at Best Buy. And then second, and a little bit more seriously, I just assumed it was due to the iPhone release. So I was like, that's got to be the driver of this. But it sounds like that this is like more of a structural thing than just one iPhone upgrade cycle. So I think the iPhone's upgrade cycle might be a part of the story, but I'm excited to kind of unpack what the fuller story is, because this just looks like great execution on behalf of Best Buy. When you're seeing a lot of other companies who serve a similar kind of consumer say they're struggling, I think when you're doing poorly, you blame the consumer. But really, the difference between companies that are winning and losing right now is execution, and it looks like Best Buy's on the right side of that equation.
I would absolutely agree with that. So I think that actually every time that Apple releases a new phone, it is in the same quarter, their fiscal third quarter. And for them, their fiscal third quarter is the same, I believe, as the standard kind of annual third quarter. But I don't think that that should make a huge difference in some of these numbers and reporting. But it's possible that there have been years that they've missed it or years that those have been delayed. So that would be offset. But what I thought was very interesting is that this is actually the first time that they've revised their outlook upward after not just this quarter, but multiple quarters of strong performance. So I think you're right. There is some more durability inside the business. And here are some of the things, right? Upgrade laptops. One thing that they mentioned that we have talked about on the podcast, how everything is AI, but not everything is AI. I actually do think some of this is AI. So AI computing power and new necessity to be able to perform with AI embedded functionality inside laptops. I didn't think of that. But also new gaming consoles, which I think has always been a driver of their business, as well as smartphones. So these numbers, again, like a little bigger than I expected, but just so that you know, their annual revenues are over $40 billion, pretty sizable business. Still pretty tiny margins on that. This is a business where razor sharp margins are a piece of the challenge, as well as cash flow management. So adjusted earnings per share are up, says it's expecting full year comparable sales that is tracking sales online for stores that have been open at least 14 months to track a 0.5% to a 1.2% increase. Initially, they were expecting a 1% decline. So I think that's a pretty interesting call. These, like you said, on execution, right? What are they seeing? Right, computing, gaming, and mobile phones, and growth in wearables and headphones. Which honestly, I kind of just thought everybody had their wearables and headphones. I'll tell you though, I do have to go to Best Buy a couple of times a year, at least online, to replace mine. So maybe people are in my category and just losing them. But sales rose across both the website and stores. That to me was one of the most astonishing things. How are they competing on their website, Namaan? How are they competing in store in these categories, right? This isn't TVs or appliances, things that you would kind of expect that you might want to like take for a test drive in some way inside the store. But these are like very common things that a lot of people are buying online. How do you win inside that category?
Let me give you my thesis, and I'll tell you what I think it is and what it's not. So let's start with in store. Why would you go to Best Buy versus anywhere else? It has to be the customer experience, right? And there's multiple pieces to the customer experience. So number one, like you have to have inventory in stock. Number two, you have to have multiple ways for people to like purchase that inventory. Like I should be able to like leverage a digital channel to order it ahead of time and go pick it up. I should be able to like play with something if I want to play with it before I buy it. I should be able to touch it. Number three, I have to have like a sales force or an associate base that is perceived as knowledgeable. So like what's one of the reasons I would like get up off my couch and go into a Best Buy is because I want to talk to somebody before I buy something, right? These are differentiators that Best Buy has to lean into. That's for the in-store. And then I think for the digital channel, it's simply how easy is it for me to like find the information I'm looking for, to like how seamless is the checkout experience? Do I earn some kind of loyalty points? Is there some kind of incentive for me to shop at Best Buy versus anywhere else? Is there like a services add-on, whether free or discounted, that I get, like some kind of training or install or something like that I get at Best Buy that I don't get going straight to Samsung if I'm going to buy like a Samsung phone? So I think all of those are ways that Best Buy differentiates. Their big challenge is they don't manufacture anything that they sell. So if Apple comes out with a sucky iPhone, Best Buy suffers, and they have nothing to do with that iPhone. So you have to be able to like differentiate in other ways that isn't the actual product. It's the experience around the product. It's the services around the product. And then you have to carry inventory that is actually in demand. And I think my guess is that Best Buy is doing a better job of leveraging its digital channel to actually figure out where customer demand is going so that their inventory is keeping up, right? Like you're able to track what someone's searching for on your app or on the website. You're able to see like where the abandoned carts are the highest versus the lowest. You're able to optimize your inventory there. I think that's one of the ways that you boost boost earnings. It's not just boosting revenue, but it's also like it's boosting the efficiency of your operations as well. So there's a lot there, but I think that's really what Best Buy would have been focused on to see this kind of performance.
If you run a small or medium-sized business, you know how fast cyber risks are evolving. That's why I use Nord products myself. And for businesses, there's Nord Stellar. It's a threat exposure management platform that helps you spot cyber threats before they become full-blown incidents. Nord Stellar combines data breach and dark web monitoring, attack surface management, and cyber squatting protection, all in one platform. It gives you real-time visibility into leaked credentials, exposed assets, and impersonation attempts so you can act before attackers do. Think of it as seeing what hackers see and fixing it first. Right now, Nord Stellar has an exclusive Black Friday offer. Unlock 20% off with code BLACKFRIDAY20, but only until December 10th, 2025. Visit nordstellar.com/simplified to secure your business today.
I love some of these comments in here, right? Customers remain resilient. I think that's something that you and I have been saying literally since the beginning of Market Outsiders. It was part of the bee in our bonnet that got this whole party started, because we're just like, look, the consumer is fine. Y'all are yelling at the top of the roof for something that is not going to materialize. And I think that's really exciting to see that more than 6 months later, we're in exactly that place. What I think is also interesting, that they're attracted to predictable sales moments. So as you can see here, Amazon is actually shaping two of the big sales moments in the year: the Prime Day event in the summer, and then there are other kind of secondary Prime Day specials that are in the fall. But the October sale, with the Prime Day event, and then the back to school sales as well, that tracks with some of what we're seeing in other segments, and even some of the recommendations that I've seen in case competitions that we've done, right, to track and hype seasonality inside businesses. In fact, it was kind of one of the opportunities that some of our students have thought that maybe Starbucks is missing out on, right? Is that like they do a great job of hyping the Christmas season. But like, what about the spring? What about St. Patty's Day? Like, what about some of these other seasonal opportunities that they're really not taking advantage of? And so I thought that was also really interesting. But then customers are thoughtful about big ticket purchases. When I was thinking about why I went into Best Buy this year, I actually went in for the opposite reason, and this can't be good for them, but it's not terrible either. I went in because I wanted to find out how little I could spend on something without overspending on features. And so I needed a laptop to power one of the businesses that we need to keep online. It's a power generation plant. And I wanted to know basically like what was the most basic laptop. It couldn't be a Mac because of the programs that I had to run, which is what we already had and used. So I didn't have any familiarity with the space, but I didn't want to spend $2,000 on this laptop if I only needed to spend $350. And I think I ended up walking out with a $600 laptop because their sales team was able to answer the question for me of which one of these will do the job that I need to do, which one am I not overspending on, which one am I not going to regret a little bit later. And I really enjoyed spending the extra 10 minutes rather than pawing through review after review after review in a very non-specific, non-customized way. I kind of wonder if, I'm actually a little bit shocked that in this environment with AI, we're not seeing more tailored customer recommendations, because I spent a lot of time reviewing other people's reviews. And it seems like the recommendation of the summary of reviews is actually not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who's like me, who has my specific situation in mind. And I think that's got to be at least in development, if not already deployed in ways that I haven't seen yet in terms of customized reviewing. But that was basically what I went for, was like, I have this one niche specific situation and I don't want to bring this back. I don't want to return it. I'm a super anti-return shopper. And so I will spend a little bit more time and energy on the front end to walk into a store to make sure that those things don't happen on the other side.
I'm sure that if Best Buy doesn't have it already, there's a sales agent coming to bestbuy.com, an AI sales agent, where you could say, this is what I need a laptop for. This is my budget. These are the programs that I run. Give me a curated set of recommendations. That has to be around the corner if it's not already operational.
And if it is operational, you know what? I probably wouldn't even trust it right now, because my trust in those, like, I kind of use it as a pretty good early guide to vet what I already think. But I think that's like trust in AI is also pretty low. I would imagine that we could probably pull up a chart that says like, I use it, but I don't necessarily believe that it's always true. But there was some gap there that I think will probably be quickly erased by technology. Couldn't agree with you more there. Kind of insights in here, right? Again, their shares were up, but again, originally I thought this was just a like we under promised and over delivered. That's kind of what I thought was the actual situation here. Their stock has dropped 7% this year, while the S&P has gained 15%. Remember, the S&P has included in it Amazon, and one of the big drivers of the S&P growth by weighting is Amazon. So initially I just expected to see Best Buy is adorable in an environment where Amazon is eating its lunch. But again, there are a couple of these underlying factors here that really honestly are probably not true. It said that one of the things that would drive its business is higher housing turnover for appliance purchases. Tech innovations is true. Increased willingness by inflation-weary customers to splurge on discretionary items. I was just thinking before we got on this call, I wonder if there's a frequency map that we could run them on that talks about how much we're talking about inflation this November versus last November. Last November, in an election year, we heard about inflation a lot. I bet it really dampened consumer demand without actually any real impact on consumer spending. On a perception basis, there was probably a sincere impact of a lot of that conversation. And I think what they're saying here is that the consumer honestly really hasn't changed a lot, but they were weary of thinking about and planning for inflation, and now they're just buying toys.
I think that's a fair interpretation. I do think there's some merit to the fact that higher housing turnover would help Best Buy's appliances business. I think, the evidence of that is just what you're seeing at Home Depot. I think Home Depot executes it exceptionally well, actually. They're a well-run company that's just caught in a bad moment in time, but they are less diversified in terms of their exposure to different product categories, and so they're hurting right now. Best Buy has some diversification here to kind of buttress themselves against what's happening in the housing market. So I think there's some merit to that, but it's not their core business. I do think here, this is interesting, net income got cut in half from the year ago period, but it looks like a lot of that's just stock-based compensation and then restructuring charges. So the market's looking past it. If you adjust for those things, earnings are actually up from $1.26 per share to $1.40 per share. And so I think that's why you see the stock price moved up, because the market actually believes these are one-time adjustments and not what I would call more structural issues in the cost structure of the business.
That's exactly right. So as you can see here, right, these are some of the main drivers. The Nintendo Switch 2, I don't know about you, Namaan, your kiddos are probably young enough, but I've got 2 with this on their Christmas list. iPhones, AI-enabled laptops. I actually have not done a big category understanding of the AI-enabled laptop space. Do you know anybody who has one, or have you purchased a laptop that has any new AI capabilities? I'm curious about that piece.
So I'm actually not even sure what they mean by that in this article. Does that just mean that you have a MacBook that can run Apple Intelligence? Does that count as AI enabled, or are you right? Because I think that's a very different definition than if you're actually doing some heavier duty work on a particular laptop.
You're coding in AI, or
Yeah, my guess is it's probably the former. It's probably any laptop that's got some kind of built-in AI in air quotes, right? And that's probably what's driving the upgrade cycle, because I would think that Best Buy's customer base isn't necessarily coming to them for the heavy duty gadgets or products. It's your more casual users who are like, I want Apple Intelligence on my MacBook. Let me buy the one with the M4 chip that allows me to do that. That's what I would think.
Let's talk just kind of as we conclude here a little bit about what else you'd want to know about Best Buy if you were going to do a deeper dive. And we would encourage you to take a little bit of this time to go deeper on a few of the businesses that we've talked about this year. It's an amazing opportunity to build business acumen and understanding and be able to connect the dots. But this kind of, right, Best Buy's annual revenue dropped for the past 3 years. One thing that they never say in here is how many stores they have. My suspicion is that Best Buy in the past 3 years has closed some stores. So this hasn't just been comparable store decreases, but also the result of what can really signal a downward spiral for a business, which is store closures to conserve cash, which result in lower revenues, which actually hurts your ability to spread out your overhead across those multiple stores, and it makes you less profitable. And then it's right, kind of keep going around in a circle. So one of the things on my list exactly is to identify actually how many stores and what the range revenue and profit per store would be, because I would imagine that there are some pretty serious regional differences on a per square foot basis as well. So on some of these revenue metrics are fine, and they do tell an interesting story. To revise this upward, I think, is very, very impressive. And again, as we both mentioned earlier, not what we expected, but it's still not the whole picture. And if you're going to think about how you would, if we gave this as a case and said, how would you grow Best Buy for the next 5 years? I don't think there's enough of the granular revenue data here to actually give you the ability to look at the details that would give you a good roadmap. What about you? What would you want to look at?
So I like your idea. I'd also want to look at margin per product category, and I'd also want to examine the competitive landscape inside of each category to see where I had pricing power. Like, it looks like there are certain segments right now where Best Buy probably has more pricing power than others. Like, can I exert and leverage that here over the next quarter or two, and then maybe use that to subsidize generating demand in other categories as well to keep my inventory turning? I'd be thinking about that. I'd also be looking at OpEx, like related to what you said, but not necessarily because I want to even cut or understand costs, but because OpEx is really the way that I would try to figure out how efficiently am I running my stores, right? So if I can start to like lean in on like additional technology in the stores, optimizing staffing, right? That's another way to not just maximize revenue per square foot, but profit per square foot. And so like the OpEx section of the P&L is where I'd be looking just to see how efficiently am I running, and can I start to generate incremental revenue in a more efficient way than I am now. That's something else I'll be looking at.
Also would imagine that, a great response or answer here would have something to do with a smaller footprint Best Buy store for exactly the reasons that you're mentioning. I can imagine you've probably seen, actually, Namaan, we travel really extensively. You've seen the Best Buy kiosks
Yeah.
inside airports, right? But imagine something that's not that, but kind of more of a corner store or a, Best Buy Lite that's inside a smaller area where you could deliver some of these higher turnover categories, iPhones, gaming, laptops. You don't need a huge amount of square footage for that. So if appliances aren't driving growth and home theater is not driving growth, then have your 5 best selections there. Enable people to return stuff, so you have kind of a storefront for easy returns that could go to a warehousing area. But I wonder if there's a possibility that expanding footprint would be interesting. And I don't know if they've tried it, but I would be really interested to know if that model right now would be an opportunity for expanding share in this market.
I would think that one way to maybe do that's inorganically. Like, could you acquire like a Staples, Office Max kind of company that's much smaller, that is probably struggling, right? Like, it seems like Best Buy is big enough from like a cash on hand perspective, from just valuation perspective, to go and make that kind of acquisition. That's a built-in footprint, right? You're gonna
You already
cut
have
a lot of those
parking
locations. Yeah,
stores, you already have
100%.
staff. Yeah. I don't know if I'd
100%.
trust the Staples staff, though. What about you? But you're right. I do feel like the Best Buy stores are already they're already overstaffed. I don't know what the overlap is for that. I don't know how much incremental population coverage you get from doing that.
100%.
And I don't know, I think it's something like there's a Walmart within, 40 minutes of every consumer in America. I don't know actually what that stat is for Best Buy, but that might be another really interesting data point. Any final data that you'd want if you were looking at growing Best Buy, let's say by a wild 2.5 or 3% in the next couple of years?
Well, I think, the one line of business we haven't talked about is services. So some of what we're talking about here, like, is commoditized, right? Like, I could go get AirPods from a lot of different places. So like, one of the ways that I could pull a consumer to me versus have them go somewhere else and increase the basket size and increase the margin per customer is to layer on services. And so I'd want to take a look at the growth trends in those services, take a look at like where the customer demand is. Is it for installs? Is it for training? Is it for antivirus? Is it for troubleshooting? And then see if there's a way that I could increase my value proposition through services, which is actually how I'd want to continue to grow if I had the choice, because that's going to be higher margin. So I'd at least want to examine that option.
It's a phenomenal idea. In fact, when you started saying that, I just thought about my recent experience at Tesla. I basically bought a Tesla for business development because I wanted to understand how Tesla operated. And my most impressed experience as a customer has been with their services side of the business. I recently had to get my windshield replaced, and everything from booking the windshield, getting an estimate, identifying a time and location where I dropped off, identifying whether or not I would have a ride, a replacement vehicle, or would have to take my own transportation, exactly the window when it would be completed, and then a communication portal for anything that I needed in the process. Like right now, I had to do something with my phone and I went into Best Buy to see if I could do it. The person wasn't standing at the counter. There was no way for me to talk to anybody. I had no way to get a price estimate. Like that experience, I mean, just hire somebody who's run that at Tesla and think about all of the opportunity you have, because at the end of that experience, after I spent the money on the windshield replacement, I also was offered a lifetime protection warranty on my windshield and a, new invitation for my next service that came through. In fact, they were running late and they were like, "Hey, just keep the car overnight. You can pick it up tomorrow." And I just wrote them and I said, "Hey, I'm leaving for 3 weeks. Like, I'm going to have to keep your car for 3 weeks." And guess what? They bumped my ticket right up. So it was like working with real people, channels that were very easy, and they drove up immediacy of revenue because they booked me in on a day that I knew, which was in just a couple of days. They booked an incremental revenue. They created a delighted customer out of me. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for Best Buy to not only expand with their current customer base and reselling to that current customer base, but actually expanding that customer base as well. And I think you're nailing it on the head for that, especially if technology becomes less expendable and more expensive. If we're embedding new chips in for AI or coding, right? The value of replacing instead of repairing, actually that turns toward repairing when those items get a little bit more expensive. Great. Final thoughts on Best Buy before we sign off and go shop, because it's time, Namaan. It's go time.
I feel like I'm gonna just have to walk into a Best Buy and see if the experience has changed, because I don't have great memories of being in Best Buy. It's the store is huge. It's difficult to find things. In my experience, associates have not been super helpful. Stores usually feel like they're understaffed. Usually I feel like I'm having to educate the associate, not the other way around. So I'm gonna have to walk in and maybe just secret shop a little bit and see what's changed.
I think Black Friday is the day to do it. Just if you walk out with something, make sure you snap a picture so we can update everybody.
5:01 a.m. I'll be there.
Well, we'd love to put together a favorite holiday deal list for the things that you're buying, where and why this year. We've talked a lot about consumer behavior, opportunities for retailers, businesses, and other segments of the market. So if you haven't yet rated and reviewed our podcast, do that first. And if you would love to just send us an email or shoot us a message through whatever channel you are writing this for, we'd love to know the top 1 to 3 items that are on your list, or a list of somebody that you love and are buying for this holiday season, so that we can compile a best of list. It'll also give us some great material to look at some new companies over the next couple of weeks as we run up to the holidays. Enjoy Thanksgiving for all of you that are in the United States and celebrating. For everyone internationally, get in on it. Honestly, the food's pretty great. And we'll see you next week. Look forward to being back with you. Have a great one. Bye, everybody.